So this week we are dog sitting this fella Max, and he's just about 1 year old, and he's already lost his ball, and he loves his ball. So let's go try and find that. Where's your ball, bud? Where'd you had it in your mouth? Oh, there it is. Here we go, buddy. Here we go. Come on. Now Anne Marie has left to do some lunch errands. There you go. So he is watching for her to get back because she is his buddy. You want me to throw that again for you? Okay. Ready? It went behind you, dude. While Anne Marie is out doing some quick errands at lunch, I am starting to get ready to do an ATV riding trip. So we're starting to get the trailers pulled out, to get everything coordinated here, and hopefully things will start to dry out. It was pouring rain again this morning. So we'll go have some fun doing a ride, but I did want to go back in and sit down and go over the breakdown of the Polaris Trailboss to kind of close that one out. The prices, everything. You saw the labor. What did it cost me to get across the finish line? So let's go swap to the computer, sit down and do that. And after this video, we'll do some trail riding, and we've got some other stuff lined up. There has just been so much rain. The ground is just so wet. Ball is life, huh? Yeah, huh? Okay. Does love that ball.
This is one of the videos that folks have shared that they appreciate being made at the end of a project. There's a lot of parts that go in, there's a lot of labor that goes in, but really, what did I pay for the quad? And then as I had to hunt down parts and replace and go through all the various discoveries, at the end of the day, what did it cost? So in front of you is really that breakdown. So we got the two quads. We got it in the light blue unit and the dark blue unit. And originally I thought the light blue had the most promise. The most parts were there for pulling things together. But $600 for the two of those as they sat. And you saw as we went through, we discovered some things like one of the carbs was completely corroded out. So we had to abandon that. Neither had an airbox. We had to go find the airbox. Unfortunately, that was fairly low cost on eBay. But it adds up. You have the airbox, you have the airbox boot, you have the air filter. So somewhere on someone's workbench, as someone started working on these, they pulled those pieces off and lost them. So we had to go find them. We only had one starter, and that starter was bad. So we had to go find a starter. And unfortunately, that's an Amazon find, not too bad. There was a battery on one of them, but completely shot battery. Now I have batteries around, so fortunately I had a spare there. The clutch intake boots were an interesting one because it literally was like a part of a bicycle tube tire that you just kind of rolled back on itself and then rolled back on. And I got them from Polaris, but they just basically almost like degraded, once they had the tension, the pressure on them. So I ended up for the clutch. Let's see. So the clutch intake boot. Clutch intake down low. So forgive me, that one didn't fall apart. That one had some bellows that kind of gave it some play. That one's fine. The boot that went from the airbox to the frame for the air intake coming down, that one fell apart. And the boot that goes from the outer clutch cover back into the clutch. Let's see, that one's going to be the air exhaust snorkel that goes up. That one fell apart. So both of those, I ended up using a wide electrical tape on them. So yes, the clutch, the next one there, line 14, clutch, the snorkel boot, that one fell apart. The clutch covers, both units had them. One had a hole in and a mouse had been living in there, really kind of made things nasty, but they were really warped. When you tried to put the two halves together, they were just kind of bananaed. So had to hunt for new inner and outer clutch covers. Now, fortunately, there's aftermarket for these for a lot of different Trailboss models, and they've re-engineered them a little, so worked out pretty well. So we got those, and that cost there added up. There was $180 right there to protect the clutch. Couldn't reuse them. There was going to be holes. You were going to get mud, water, whatever it was in there. Trick of it is get the venting done right. The connections to the tubes, because it's pulling cool air in and ejecting out to keep your belt cold. If you think you're slipping on the belt, get off the gas, let it cool. Uh, One, you can destroy the belt. You could also warp the cases, but you could also start a fire. So keep that in mind. Bar grips, they were completely destroyed. So got a low cost set off of Amazon there. Carb rebuild kit, even for the carb that was salvageable, everything inside was just we couldn't reuse it, gaskets, etc. If you remember earlier in the video going through there. So we got this rebuild kit from Freedom County. I've used that brand before. Pistons and gaskets. So as we got through, we could crank all day long. And you remember how much oil was down in the lower part of the case there. Uh, Ended up getting, so one of the bores way out of spec, and that's out being bored and going to have a piston match to it right now. The other one bought a knockoff piston and rings, a no-name brand, running a little bit of a risk there, but putting it in, the rings were in spec for the ring gap, so we went ahead and put that in. It's kind of, unfortunately, a bit of a throwaway cost. When I get the new reboard cylinder back and piston, we're going to put that on, and this $100 piston is going out. So right now it gets us up and riding, but it didn't take the compression up very much. I'm still running under 115 compression right now, because it really does need that bore job to be done right. Under 115, it is tough to start. When it's warm, it starts right up and goes, but if it's cold, you can foul a plug pretty easily. And also remember, with the oil injection, as long as you're holding that button and cranking, you're dumping oil into the bottom of that case. And you may have to open up the drain bolt on the bottom, let all that out, fuel mixture and all that. You might have to clean the plug if it's all fouled up or a new plug. And getting the plugs out of this is a pain. I have not found a way to get a plug out to clean it without taking the handlebars off so I can raise the tank and get my hand in there. It's just not like other systems like some of the Yamaha Moto 4s, the Big Bears, the Blasters, where literally you pull the boot, tool on, you're out in 30 seconds. Changing a plug in here is not something you're going to be inspecting or doing on the trail. So because of that, I'm still kind of holding off getting this one really out in the woods, because if I foul it, I'm not in a good place to get it start up, even just cranking hard on the pull start. Hand pull start, that was another thing missing on one of the units. The other one had one, but it was damaged. It was broken inside. I went through two kits online that were supposedly advertised for this 86 Trailboss 250, and neither of them fit, and they were both wildly out with the pull housings, just either too big. Um, one was too big, and the other one just completely different setup. So got to watch out for that, because people will post, "Oh yeah, it fits all these models." You got to really hunt. Taillight was smashed on both of them. I did find on eBay, I got a taillight, but if you saw, I got a multi-function taillight, where this unit just has on-off. Multi-function be if you pressed on the rear brake, it gets brighter to kind of signal you're slowing down. So I wasn't able to use the entirety of the light, but what I needed was the plastic, housing, red light and all that. So I was able to do that, do some repair on one of the posts, get a tail light in. The petcock, this one you remember really kind of bugged me, because on this unit, the petcock is on the opposite side of many ATVs. So it's on the side with the exhaust has to route all the way across the motor to the fill nipple on the carburetor. And I just didn't like that long fuel line being close to the exhaust. So the 2003 Predator 500 from Polaris has the petcock that exits the petcock on its left-hand side, where so many are right-hand side. Once I got that, I was able to shorten fuel line, and through shortening fuel line, I wrapped some in aluminum. I put some protective spring around it to get it routed as close or as smoothly as I could away from any exhaust danger. If I start scrolling down here, Crank seals, this was another big one. Leak down test, two-stroke. You've always got to do the leak down test. Once we had everything sealed up, I couldn't hold 5 psi for 5 seconds on them. Both seals were done. Now these seals you don't have to split the case to do, which is quite handy. But to do it, you would have to get your stator side off. Easy enough to get to, but then the clutch side, the PTO driven side, you've got to get your clutch covers off, both clutches, driven and drive clutch, and then the back, the inner clutch cover to get at it. Could take you a little more there, but fortunately you're not pulling a motor, you're not splitting a motor, so there's something to be thankful for. Once I had good crank seals in there, we passed the leak down test and we were able to continue on. Rear brake cable seized up on both units. I had to buy a new cable and then had to rebuild the rear brake. Fortunately, able to find that easy enough. Chain and sprockets. One chain had a broken link, which was a little spooky to even just ride around the lawn on waiting for it to go. And it took me a lot of work to find the master links. The other chain, I had to just work on and clean for a while to find where the master, because it's just caked in grease and grime. Ultimately found out there was no master link. So it was important to inspect that chain, because had I gotten up and going ripping around the woods, that could be a chain falling off, leaving me stranded, or even worse, that chain binds up, and as it goes around the front sprocket, punches a hole in the transmission, then you got a whole other situation. So we have new chain, we have new sprockets, and we bounced down here, and you're starting to see it. We had to find a clutch snorkel again, something that came off. It's probably left on someone's workbench, but if you're sealed up nice and tight, that prevents water from getting down into your clutch, your drive and driven clutch. So important there. So you'll see $772 in parts that I accounted for there. And this is, still with pulling everything that I could off of what became the parts quad, the light blue unit. The original plan was to see if I could get both running. But as you start getting into it, and you realize that you're missing a stator cover, you're missing a pull start, you're going to have to find a carb. You have a need for a battery. You had a cracked and bent frame on one of them, and both frames needed some welding underneath because they were starting to rust through. Um, those parts, boy, I mean, we had the throttle up on one of them was just being held together with a washer, no threads left for adjusting throttle play. So it came to a point where we had the opportunity to get one good running one, but a second one, maybe a rolling chassis, but with a tweaked front end. Got to kind of think about what I'm going to do there. So lots of great parts, but still above and beyond 772 on top of that 600. So there it is, just shy of $1,400. Brought the 1986 Trailboss back. There's a few things not accounted for in this list right now. If I scroll down, some of the shop stuff, so the paint, I didn't account for the VHT paint or some of the Rust-Oleum satin black that I used touching up the frame. Aluminum heat tape that I had around, you saw we put that on the fairing, so that on the rear fairing, so we wouldn't catch that on fire, but we also did some wrapping of the fuel line there. There was paint all over the dark blue plastics that we ended up using, so some paint stripper cleaned that up great. I did also use SC1, which isn't in this list, cleaning up. And I didn't have a clutch puller tool. So some of these things, kind of the shop things, rags and all that, kind of add up, make this closer to 1,400. But also need to consider that we have not received back the new top end, the one being bored and piston there. So there's going to be a few hundred there to put the final top end on to complete this and get it out ripping and riding. So you can call it 1,400 today, but remember, we're going to have that additional cost to put it all together. So I hope this is helpful if you're taking on projects. Kind of, I did this for the Big Bear as well. It was a popular video breaking down at the end of the day the financial cost of putting it through. You've seen the labor, you've seen me go back and forth and redo and troubleshoot and just come up with parts. If you're thinking of taking on a project, I hope this will help. And until the next one, I've got a few others lined up. Enjoy. So until the next one, thank you. I hope this was helpful, and let's see what the next project